How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Tonight we're getting into the Jeskai Strikers Precon and giving some suggestions on what to do with this thing to try to make it a little bit better or to change it up completely. Now, unlike the last couple videos where I've kind of mentioned some cards that I would put in both, I would actually diverge on the builds depending on which of the two legends that you go with in this one. So I'm only going to have some suggestions for Narset and Shiko as well as Elsha. So let's take a look at the deck now. First up, just for reference, if you don't know what the primary commanders of this deck do, first we have Shiko and Narset unified. For one, a blue, red, and a white, you get a Flying Vigilance Human Spirit Dragon. It's a 4/4 with Flurry, which is the new keyworded version of whenever you cast a second spell each turn. For this particular creature, you copy that spell, and if it targets a permanent or player, you can copy the spell and put new targets on it. And if you don't copy a spell this way, you draw a card. So basically, when the second spell goes off, if it's targeting something, you can copy it and make a new target for it. If it's something that you can't copy because it's not targeted, like say, an artifact or something like that, well, then you can go ahead and get a card off of it. So you can kind of time yourself a little bit in terms of what you want, if you want an extra copy or if you want to just draw that card to keep fueling your hand. So for the most part, Elsha and Shiko and Narset kind of actually diverge a little bit on how I would actually build this. Instead of building Shiko and Narset around more like combat tricks, which is kind of what Elsha wants because it's more of a combat-centric commander, I'd actually do this with some like big, splashy, targeted spells. So let's talk about some things that I would include there, such as Fractured Identity. For 3, a white and a blue, you get a sorcery that says exile target non-land permanent. Each other player other than its controller creates a token that is a copy of it. So you can go ahead and target a non-land permanent with this, and if it's the second spell on the stack, you go ahead and you get a second copy and exile something else, and then everybody gets to have 2 copies of it. So if you wanted to, you could play this sort of as a group hug if you wanted to, exile something yours to give all of the opponents something. Or you can just, oh, that's a really good thing over there. I'm going to go ahead and exile that thing, and each of us are going to get a copy of it. So there's a lot of cool things you can do with a copy of Fractured Identity. Or you can do something similar to the Fractured Identity, but more for just yourself, with Elminster's Simulacrum. For 4 and double blue, it's an instant. For each opponent, you create a token that's a copy of up to 1 target creature that player controls. So you can target 3 creatures, 1 on each of your opponents in a pod, and then you get a copy of them. And then Shiko and Narset, if it's the second spell, makes a copy of this, and you get to do it again. You can copy the same 3 creatures, or you can copy 3 more other creatures and just load your board up. So you can go from nothing to a full army in just 1 spell. Or how about Bribery? 3 double blue sorcery, search target opponent's library for a creature card and put that card onto the battlefield under your control, and then that player shuffles. Since we're targeting a player, we get to go ahead and make a copy of this as long as it's the second spell with Shiko and Narset sitting out, and we get to steal 2 creatures, and doesn't necessarily have to be from the same person's deck. We can go ahead and steal from another person's deck as well. In the same vein as Bribery, we also have Inevitable Betrayal, which is a suspend version of Bribery. For 3 mana, suspends for 3. You get to put it out. If a time counter is on it, search your target opponent's library for a creature, put it onto the battlefield under your control, and shuffle the library. Now, what's cool about this is you have a couple ways you can play this. You can go ahead and let it go off, and then you get to copy something from your hand, because this would count as your first spell, and whatever you cast next would be your second spell. Or if you have something instant speed, you can respond to this being on the stack, cast something into it. The other spell is going to resolve first, and then this will be the second spell resolving, and then you will get a copy of it as well. Veering back towards things that target creatures, look at Guff Rewrites History. For 2 and a red, it's an instant. For each player, choose target non-enchantment, non-land permanent that player controls. Those permanents' owners shuffle them into their libraries, and for each player who controlled one of those permanents, they exile cards from the top of their library until they exile a non-land card, and then puts the rest on the bottom of their library in a random order. Each player may cast the non-land card they exiled without paying its mana cost. So this is essentially a souped-up variation of Chaos Warp, except for it lets them get, they can cast whatever they get off of it, rather than saying a Chaos Warp only lets you reveal a permanent and they get it. This one, they get to cast whatever they get. But this is a nice little way to remove a bunch of stuff all at once, because again, if you get to copy this, you get to do it twice and make a bunch of stuff disappear, or flip something cool for free off the top of your deck. And something really cool that would be fun to flip off the top of the deck with Guff Rewrites History is Clone Legion, 7 in double blue. It's a sorcery for each creature target player controls. Put a token onto the battlefield that's a copy of that creature. Big dumb spells I like, and that's what's going in this deck. And, you know, this would be just a ton of fun to be like, okay, I'll take all of your creatures. Oh, it's a second spell, and I'll take all of your creatures as well and fill my board up. But if I can't fill my board up with their stuff, I'm going to make their stuff disappear with River's Rebuke. 4 in double blue sorcery. Return all non-land permanents target player controls to their owner's hand. So 2 players are going to lose their boards. If I can't steal their stuff, copy their stuff, or do something with it, this is what's going to happen. And if I can't bounce their stuff or copy it, we're just going to put their stuff to sleep with a copy of Sleep. 2 in double blue sorcery. Tap all creatures that a target player controls. Those creatures don't untap during the next untap step. So 2 players are going to have their stuff all locked down, giving you free and clear swinging lanes. Or you can even play a little bit of political stuff saying, okay, who doesn't want their stuff put to sleep? I put those guys to sleep. Now you swing at them and leave me alone. So there's some good stuff you can mess around with this card. Also in the tradition of the briberies and the inevitable betrayals, but the stuff has to actually be on the board, is Blatant Thievery for 4 in triple blue sorcery. For each opponent, gain control of target permanent that player controls. So you get to copy this with Jeskai and Narset if it's a second spell because we're targeting permanents. So we get to go ahead and start taking stuff, and then we get to take another one. So it's just like, I'll take some of that, I'll take some of that, I'll take that too. There's a lot of cool things you can do with this spell. Now, if you want to get into the really brutal and the really mean and high-powered stuff with this commander and some of the stuff I'm suggesting, then you could get into time spells as well, such as Time Warp, Time Stretch, and Beacon of Tomorrows. All of these actually target a player, so you target yourself, and then you get to copy it with Jeskai and Narset and target yourself again and take 2 extra turns. Now, the way that works is with the new bracketing system, this would not be allowed in brackets 1 or 2, and I think 3 as well. I think this lands in tier 4, but if you're wanting to get into that bigger, meaner stuff, these are the kind of things I would play with Jeskai and Narset unified. And then on the other side of the deck, we have the other new legend, Elsha, 3-fold master. For a blue, red, and a white, you get a 1/1 Jin monk with trample and prowess. And whenever it deals combat damage to a player, create that many 1/1 white monk creature tokens with prowess. So the idea here is to cast a bunch of stuff, get the prowess up on it, or pump it up with pump spells or anything like that, smack an opponent, and once that damage comes through, it's going to create a bunch more of these prowess monk creature tokens, which then will start to snowball as you cast more and more spells, because they're going to get pumped up every spell you cast that's non-creature from there on out. So there's a lot of cool things you would do here that I wouldn't necessarily do with Jeskai and Narset, but let's take a look here what I would suggest with Elsha instead. And the way I would build it is similar to what I did with Bria Riptide Rogue, who is going to be in this deck as well. For 2, a blue and a red, it's a 3/3 Otter Rogue with prowess. Other creatures you control have prowess, and whenever you cast a non-creature spell, target creature you control can't be blocked this turn. So ideally what you do is you cast something, the prowess triggers are going to stack because this granting prowess is actually going to give Elsha prowess. So it's going to trigger twice, and you can make it unblockable. So then the full power of Elsha is going to come trucking through, and you're going to make a ton of these monk tokens, sorry, excuse me. And that it's going to just come on through, and you're going to start just snowballing downhill really fast. We can also include the Narset from the Martian Machine Aftermath, which does a very similar thing to Bria. It's Narset Enlightened Exile. It's a 3/4 human monk. It says creatures you control have prowess, and whenever it attacks, exile a non-creature, non-land card with mana value less than Narset's power from the graveyard and copy it, and you can cast the copy without paying a mana cost. Now, it's a graveyard, not your graveyard, so you can start stealing your opponent's stuff and using those to power the prowess up. And again, this will stack up with Elsha granting prowess. It also stacks up with any of the other creatures in the deck, the monk tokens including, giving those prowess as well. And if you somehow manage to get Narset Enlightened Exile and Bria Riptide Rogue on the board, and you have a prowess creature, it's prowess. And speaking of something sending the prowess through the stratosphere, let's look at Kenra Spell Spear for 1 in a red, 2/2 trample prowess, Jackal Warrior with 3 and a Phyrexian blue to transform it. And then you can flip it over into Gitaxian Spellstalker. It's Trample Ward 2, and it already has prowess. So it already has 2 instances of prowess, and if you can stack it up with the other ones, it's going to keep going up and up and up. And I think you can get that all the way up to 4 instances of prowess on this card at once if you get to Magical Christmas Land. Another way to expand our prowessing tokens is Eris Roar of the Storm for 8, a blue, and a red. It costs 2 less to cast for each different mana value among instants and sorceries in your graveyard. It has flying and prowess itself, and whenever you cast your second spell each turn, create a 4/4 red dragon elemental creature token with flying and prowess. So not only does this have prowess, it makes prowess tokens for us to keep building up to critical mass. Now, what would I cast into all of these prowessing things? Well, let's try some combat tricks very similar again to what I did with Bria with like Brute Force. We have a red instant, it's giant growth in red, +3/+3 until end of turn. Or maybe we can do something like Turn Inside Out, single red, instant, target creature gets +3/+0 until end of turn, and if it dies this turn, you manifest Dread. Either one of these is just great because it gives you a nice big power boost for like Elsha or any of our other prowess creatures, and then we also get to trigger the prowess off of it. It's just a good set of cards to run with, and anything similar to this is going to be the things you want to run. You're just going to want to run things with like extra combats because then you get to go ahead and keep chaining that damage through after you've already popped off with all these prowess stuff with things like Overpowering Attack, 3 red sorcery. It's a free running 2 in a red. Untap all creatures you control that attack this turn if it's your main phase. There's an additional combat phase after this one followed by an additional main phase. Or maybe you do something more like Great Train Heist. It's a red to start, and then you have a spree cost, 2 in a red, untap all your creatures. If it's your combat phase, there's an additional combat phase after this one. Add 2 colorless to that red, you get to pump all the creatures by +1/+0 and first strike. And if you add a red to that red, you get to choose a target opponent, and whenever that opponent is dealt damage by a creature, you create a tapped treasure token. Any way you slice it, extra combats are going to be a great way to go ahead and just finish somebody off or punch a bunch of damage through for somebody else to finish the job on their turn coming up next. Now, as I said, these are cards that I would recommend as a diverging build. I'm not really going to recommend cards for both of the decks like I did before. Now, what do you guys think of these? How would you build this deck? Would you stick with combat tricks with both commanders? Would you build them completely differently? I like the idea of the big splashy spell build with maybe some discount cards for instants and sorceries to cast those spells in a different way, or maybe figure out a way to copy them with other copying spells on top of that. There's just a lot of weird ways you could go with either one of these decks, but let me know what you think in the comments down below. And as always, thank you for watching. Have a great day, and I will see you in the next video.